In today's episode of the podcast, I was joined by friend and colleague who has been on the podcast before, Ben Cant, who is an extremely sound voice of reason and somebody who I look up to in the industry and continue to learn from every time that I have a conversation with. Something that I love about Ben is that he is a very open book, very honest, very transparent, which is just what the industry needs when it comes to the educational front. Today, we spoke about some of the issues and controversies that exist within the health and fitness industry and overall tried to summarize what can be a very confusing topic in nutritional sciences. We got to share some of the strategies and simplicities in which we use within our own coaching deliveries that I'm sure that you will take value from and can implement yourself, while also delving deep into some of the beneficial supplements that you may consider, not just for performance, but also longevity and well-being. As always, thank you to our sponsors in 132 Cafe on Chapel Street in Windsor for keeping us stimulated and engaged for our conversations. And thank you to you, the watchers, the supporters, the subscribers of the Living Rewired podcast and brand. If you've been listening to the podcast and haven't yet subscribed, please do so, because that really helps me in my journey in growing the podcast and ultimately landing more exciting guests, which brings you better content to consume and listen to.
Come on, baby.
Alrighty, sweet. So what did we say we were going to talk about today? We're going to talk about problems in the industry? Or problems? Is that a bit aggressive?
I don't know. Where did that come from, though?
Well, I just sent you a text.
Yeah. I don't know. Can't remember if you wrote anything underneath that. It was funny because I got to, chatting to Jake Dolshall on one of his posts that he just did about, like, should coaches have to say that their clients are on steroids?
Yep.
And I've like, I had to jump in on it because I've like, a bit to say on that topic.
I would love to hear it.
Yeah. No, but look, he basically said because it's really like the topic of just misleading in advertising, which is fucking prolific through our industry, as you know. And I just sort of said, look, I think that at the end of the day, a generic rather than a specific disclaimer is going to be beneficial. You know what I mean? Like, rather than outing someone for steroid use or really anything that's that personal, I don't think it's a great idea. And I said, because look, if you think that we're living in an age that at some stage a life insurance company or health insurance company isn't going to scour people's social media looking for reasons not to pay out claims, you're going to be sorely mistaken soon. So I'd be like very prudent with any kind of, social media, use of like describing your steroid use. That's for sure.
Well, for sure, it's very personal, and it's kind of people's medical.
It absolutely is
stuff as well.
Yeah. The counterpoint to that is that it's like you're selling a system or you're selling a promise, a result, whatever it is.
The Liver King situation.
The Liver King situation is exactly, and I said this on his post. I was like, it's like the old, remember the Muscle Tech ads days? Cell Tech and the Nitratech proteins, and they'd be next to the
and how you'd have all the
pros.
bodybuilders saying, "This is what I'm taking."
14 pounds of muscle in 12 days. That would be the promise, right?
Yep.
And it was just laughable. It was laughable to anyone, but at the end of the day, it was just such a misleading set of ads. And where Jake's coming from, I totally agree with him. Like, yeah, anyone who's misleading, like promising the look of a enhanced individual for a natty is should be shot.
It's all about the context behind the intention with the post.
Exactly. And I sort of said, I think your coaching process should be in the inquiry stage. Look, what drew you to me? Oh, you like so-and-so that's I put on stage at 110 kilos? Yeah. Like, how do you feel about steroids? you use that process to kind of feel out where they're coming from. And then, look, if you're looking for a physique like that, more than likely that's not a natural situation.
Yep.
And that's just the due diligence and getting away from any kind of misleading, right?
For sure. Whether or not it has to be in such a public forum or whether you're just open and honest in your transparency with that client, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But I think even with the Liver King situation, right? Like, did anyone really think he wasn't on steroids? I mean, I'm sure, I know that's I'm taking the piss for that question, but
I said the same thing, you know.
The people that are upset are the ones that probably didn't see that.
Yeah. I mean, we see a certain slice of any population that are, you know, consuming his content, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's got a large population consuming that content now.
Yep.
So undoubtedly, there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't have assumed that he was on steroids. You know, just not that savvy with the fitness industry as a whole or the topic. But nonetheless, here's the difference, though. He got pinned down on that question in several podcasts and denied it. You know,
that's what made him look bad too.
That's what made him look bad. He's like, deny, and I can understand it. I'm like, again, that's not an ideal situation for someone who does anabolic steroids to be caught in a public situation, have to disclose their medical history. You know what I mean? It sort of like stands alone as a choice of drug or something like that is somehow supposed to come under that scrutiny. We wouldn't do it with other things. No. And there wouldn't be a stigma as well.
That's it. It's the stigma that exists to it, that if you take steroids, everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is such bullshit.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So, I mean, I had no problem with Liver King. But at the end of the day, he was and is selling the supplements line along. And I'm like, when you combine those things together, that's where I can see misleading is starting to occur.
If he wasn't selling the supplements and saying that his results were attributed to those supplements, it would have been a very different ballgame.
Every bit of content there is basically driving you towards that eating liver and testicles and taking the supplements helps you live and achieve his tenets.
I felt disappointed because I actually think his message is a positive one.
Yeah.
Like, without dissecting it and picking it apart, his overall message of trying to live that kind of lifestyle in terms of exercising, working out every day, eating foods provided to us by the earth, the nutrient density of organ meats, was all good stuff.
Yeah.
That people needed to hear, but it just got muddied in the waters.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. Like I kind of enjoyed like the, you know, just the way he rolled out that content and became
quick.
What it was. It made me look at, you know, when I talked about all my beef liver and go, why didn't I hit that harder?
Yeah, for sure. You know, for sure.
I should have become the Sardine King.
Just sitting there eating it.
Yeah. Look, but nonetheless, you know, this is the thing. He got pinned down in public forums on podcasts where, you know, he obviously didn't go into those saying, hey, this is off the topic. You know, let's not talk about this, which I'm sure a lot of people at that level who don't want to disclose that information. You said that beforehand. Like a lot of, you know, I don't know if you do, but we've had people on the podcast say, hey, is there anything you want to talk about today?
You don't want to touch on.
Yeah, and it might be like, hey, I don't want to talk about my steroid use.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's probably his fuck up on his own due diligence there.
Maybe.
But at the same time, would that have really stayed quiet? Probably not.
No.
Because then it would have just taken one person to say, hey, Liver Kim came on the website, on the podcast. He said he didn't want to talk about that. Guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
The result would have been the same.
Exactly. But look, as you know, just as a general theme throughout the industry, you know, I think, there are plenty of coaches and influencers that use misleading content.
I feel that it's not spoken about enough, particularly in the female gender. I feel like there's more women taking PEDs and, you know, testosterone derivatives than we've ever seen before.
Right.
And that, like, everyone knows that blokes take steroids, but you see these fitness models that are women, they're on gear too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. It is, man. Like, it's fairly prolific. I think even performance enhancing drugs now, like, over the last decade, I would say, at least in Australia, as I know it, like even just very average gym goers are experimenting. Mm-hmm. People that you would just think, why would you even consider going down that pathway? You don't really care about this that much.
Bro, I know about
you don't love
exactly
the process.
What you mean. I got a message from a chick the other day. No idea who she is, but it was just off the back of a post or something that I'd mentioned. And she came to me with concern that her partner, who has just started going to the gym, was wanting to jump on gear. And he's probably 20 years old. And yeah, man, I feel like when it comes to personal choice with steroid use, I couldn't give a fuck whether you do or you don't. It's your life. Like, I've taken most other drugs. Why would you judge me for doing this one, which has probably got more arguments for than a lot of the recreational shit. But when it comes to the steroid conversation, I feel like it's something that needs to be earned. in a way.
Yeah, well, I think and you would see this a lot as well. It's just that when you don't have any of those fundamentals in place, and then the topic all of a sudden becomes towards steroids or supplements, even we could just talk about supplements. Is there exactly the same? It's just this shortcut mentality to how can I leverage off of something else to not put in the effort or not put in the discipline.
And that's what I mean. I think it's a piss take if you don't even know how to train and push hard yet.
Yeah,
you haven't even got down consistency with your eating patterns, even if that's as little as hitting a protein goal and sleeping. Just the very basic fundamentals of what it means to improve body composition, and then you're jumping into the steroid game. It's a bit like, I also feel like it's tied into just society in general. It's like if you want food these days, you used to have to go farm, hunt, grow your crops. Now you're doing Uber Eats. You used to want to have a sexual partner. You had to go build up the courage to go introduce yourself, ask them out a date. Now you're just swiping across or ordering it online. So the same thing, everyone just wants the result now. Yeah. And that is obviously an accelerated pathway to the outcome you're looking for.
Absolutely. I don't know if guys are younger guys are justifying it too with just the crushed modern male form. You know what I mean? Like lower testosterone levels, just toxic masculinity being thrown around for any kind of masculinity trait. Is it like just the resort to I don't know, to steroids? But definitely when it comes to females, it is like it's fairly prolific, more prolific than I think what people would accept. And again, like even coming back to the initial conversation about misleading, like when I get let's say an inquiry or just into a discussion with a client on maybe someone who they find inspirational and stuff like that, who knows enhanced, they don't know it's enhanced, and maybe we don't even know, it's just our best guess. It's like obvious just with our experience and stuff like that. But it's about having that conversation without necessarily throwing someone under the truck. Like if you don't know something, why would you go spreading something?
Yep.
Or if you do know it, then why would you, and especially if, maybe it's one of your clients, then why would you give up your client's personal information? You wouldn't. You shouldn't. Absolutely not. But you have to sort of pass or convey across to someone who just is naive to that topic that, like, look, achieve where you are and what you're looking at, the gap there is probably going to involve drugs.
For sure. But there are also, like, there's a wide variety of genetics. There are some guys out there that are just freaks.
I am very thankful that in my bodybuilding career, I never ran up against one of those natty freaks that decided to jump into a non-tested show and wipe the floor with all the boys using gear. Because that is a sight to behold. I love seeing that, to be honest. I'm just glad I never lined up and lost to someone like that.
Yeah, no doubt. But, we talked about it before, and like the stigma, right? Because when people naturally think of steroids, they think of the Ronnie Colemans and the Kai Greens and that physique. But people don't quite get that those guys at 17 were better than what I would be on all that gear.
Mate, don't you love seeing those posts when you see these like those Lee Priest at 19 photos, and you're like, I walked on a stage for most of the shows here in this state or country. He would just smash everyone.
You may as well just quit now.
Exactly.
What do you think, you sort of spoke about, it's like shaming Derek, more plates, more dates, about the way he goes about calling people out. Do you think it's coming from a positive place?
I think that's a complicated topic.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and again, sometimes I miss a lot of these more popular kind of educators or influencers and stuff like that. There are a lot of people that I'm very late to the party and following just because I don't necessarily get on social media enough. Yeah. But Lane Norton was one of the ones who I consider in terms of like what I consumed as being one of the OGs when it came to calling BS.
Okay.
And I feel like he was one who sort of cut through and said, this is rubbish. I'm calling you out.
Controversial character.
Yeah. But I feel like he built his brand and his career around doing that to a certain degree. Yeah. Which it worked. And I think at the time when he was doing that, I didn't see a lot of other people at his level doing that either. But then, as you point out, it has become like a theme of content creation.
It's almost like hunting, like game sporting.
Yeah. Now I enjoy, do you know Brad Carpenter, the UK guy?
I don't.
No. So I really enjoy his posts. He's He's a great coach and trainer and educator and author, but he has a way of just reviewing like TikTok videos or Instagram videos and stuff like that, and kind of like all comments under the comment section of certain things. And I think just like really putting it into perspective from a very health orientated, but also kind of like an awareness of the conversation around the psychological aspects as to what's going on with some of these posts as well. So I think that there's a high road, in doing this, and then there's probably a low road as well. You know what I mean? So Derek, I don't know. I haven't watched enough of his content to watch the way he did it. Obviously, I know about the Liver King thing. So
yeah, well, he's the main obvious one, but yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of the Wild West out there, isn't it? Really. But to come back to the original sort of topic that I want to talk about the good or the bad and the confusion, because I really feel like people are just so confused. So I get so many people coming to me and they're so confused. They will show me, an influencer or somebody who works in the industry, and they go, oh, look, this person's getting these results and they're eating KFC, Zinger Burger, and that's the sort of, basis of their nutrition. It's just all calories in, calories out. Then you're getting people, whether it be Liver King, going hard on the organs and the meats. Then you get people like Paul Saladino trying to scare people away from vegetables.
yeah,
And in many ways, I think all of them are right. They're all telling the truth in their own context, but for the purpose of attention and social media is they don't actually elaborate on it. So it's no longer about the value that you're giving to the client rather than the clickbait, in a way. I don't feel like it's actually helping the audience.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I so agree, bro. Like this, I'm horrible with social media. Like I haven't grown, and I'm so late to the party in kind of like using hook lines or clickbait or like a black and white statement, because that's just not how I talk. I am too long-winded for that, for Instagram, for instance, as a platform. That's why I enjoy the podcasts.
Yep.
Because I love hearing my own voice. It's definitely not that. Because it just gives me a chance to kind of like give context to things, rather than like what you can try and wrap up in a 15-second or 90-second video. And you have to start that with the thing that captures people's attention.
Yeah, you got to put the last thing first.
You've got to put the last thing first. Yep. Exactly. And I feel like that sometimes isn't necessarily the best way to teach people or to have people walking away better off for it. It's definitely a great way to capture attention. That is the commodity right now, is attention, right? So, yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, it's just, that's the way that it's going. Especially on these platforms with shorter, short video content. But I don't think it necessarily always leaves, a person coming away better off for it.
Yep. And so in a way, what I would like to do, given that we have the time and the ability, is to give the listeners some good general advice that they can walk away with. Because I know a lot of your clients, unless they're obviously probably competitors, you're doing very specific calorie manipulations. But for the most part, I give calories a hard time, calorie counting a hard time. But that's only due to probably some of my frustrations or the damage or the isolation that I've seen, is that it's just a one card trick. And if you're forever reliant on tracking everything, but you have no concept of food quality, that you're kind of forever going to be confined to that calorie prison. But again, these things are tools. Calorie counting is very fucking important to understand what is in food and how much, and go through a period of time to weigh things. Because the average Joe, if you say to them, look, I want you to eat a 350 gram portion of protein and a 400 gram portion of sweet potato, what does that look like?
Yeah.
You got no fucking idea.
Yeah.
So until you go through the process of repeating that over and over and over, so then your intuition is actually backed by something, it serves its time and place. But I don't know. You get what I mean?
Very much so. Yeah. I think, like you sort of said, these things are all tools, right? So like, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a calorie framework, with macronutrients, highest accuracy? Yes. Highest restriction? Yes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's what you get. Do you have expectations of the highest, fastest, most possible accurate results? Well, if you do, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily say it doesn't come with drawbacks. It does. But if you have if you want less restriction, and less accuracy, like, are you willing to accept less like a less fast route to some of the outcomes that you want, maybe when it comes to your body composition goals, but be very much satisfied by the fact that you feel like, I never feel like I'm on a diet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm on a diet. I'm slowly over time transforming myself, into the person I want to be. I'm completely fine with any of those situations, right?
Yep.
So myself, like what I like to explain to a client that I work with is this, because sometimes I'll get, an inquiry, be like, hey, what's your nutrition philosophy? And I'm like, oh man, where do you start with that? I'm just going to say, let me tell you what I think the average person who comes to me wants. And I don't think that this is necessarily a selection bias to me just because I do specific things. I'm going to try and leave that stuff to the side.
Yep.
What I would usually say is if you are completely uninformed, right? I used to be hardcore, well, for a phase. I went through a hardcore phase of going, right, you need to learn the principles of like energy expenditure and calories and macronutrients. And of course, you would send people on a curriculum before that they could actually get to a point where they could do anything. And no client wants to start off like that. And
feeling confused, overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's like, here's my fitness pal, the search engine, and here's your target. Go figure it out. It's like, that's the whole,
But there's a lot of that.
Yeah, that's I'm going to get up on my soapbox and I'm going to teach you how to fish. I'm not giving you a fish. What good is that? And I've kind of like, gone different areas in my coaching and thought, look, I don't think that's actually the best effective way whatsoever. I think actually showing someone what a fish looks like is the first step, okay? And I'm like, what I mean by that is I have something which I've called the 500 calorie meal method. You know what I mean? And so that's just something when I say, listen, if I need to create a 2,000 calorie meal plan for a client, and I just think that's somewhere to start them, I go, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to, if you like, I'm going to write you up 4 500 calorie meals, okay? Because 500 is a nice, easy number to do math in your head of.
True.
Okay? And this is on the due diligence of like, asking them about their nutritional preferences and their schedule and their preparation skills and like what kind of nutritional literacy they have leading up to this point, okay? Then you'll give them options for that. And then I'll give them a recipes section of other 500 calorie meals.
And have you created these recipes?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. And I've had like clients submit things and these are just things that come over in time. I'm definitely no genius in the kitchen, right? This is more about, I think where my strengths are is just having solutions on hand. And so therefore, like a client will say, look, this is great. I have a method that doesn't require a lot of like cognitive abilities for me to deploy. I can do this math. I understand these portions. And when you're doing consistent portions with things, coming back to what you said before about what's a 300 gram steak, if you do the same 500 calorie meals across like different food portions, I've found that you do get much better at gauging portions as a whole. As
you get very good at being able to guess it accurately.
As it relates to that specifically. But then what it does is it allows a plug and play mentality. This is like what Weight Watchers did with points.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm literally just taking something Weight Watchers did 20 to 30 years ago and just kind of going, look, let's do that, and this has been done before. Like this has been done by many other coaches and systems and stuff like that. I just liked it because I felt like it brought the accuracy of the calories and the macronutrients in with the ease of like a plug and play model. Okay. And what I found by that is clients get to understand portions very quickly. They have a plan A, okay, which is great. But then they also have the flexibility to understand, okay, you can redeploy like however many of those, if you want to redeploy 500 of those calories out of your 2,000 towards the flexible stuff, you can go for it. And then what I'll do is I'll say, listen, let's have some plan Bs. What do the plan Bs look like? The plan Bs look like those days where we're doing a podcast and I didn't bring anything to eat, but I know there's a sushi shop around the corner. What's 500 calories worth of sushi? Okay, it's 3 tuna sushi rolls. Okay, let's say you're here, you work here, this is your office, and over there you've got like a couple of boxes of Carmen's muesli bars and a tub of protein. 2 Carmen's muesli bars and a protein shake, that's 500 calories. There's a fruit bowl over there, okay? 200 grams worth of bananas, a muesli bar and a protein shake, that's 500 calories as well. And so what I give people is all these options for different scenarios. So if I've got laborers, for instance.
Which is pretty important for the guys that are trying to grow.
Absolutely. But I think what it is important for is that like the days that you get caught out away from your food prep or your nutrition plan going the way it wants to go are the days where you've got the least amount of mental fortitude and abilities to then think on your feet.
Sure.
Because shit's hit the fan.
Yep.
You're either late, unprepared, the day went completely sideways.
Yep.
That's not a great time for you to be thinking on your feet and trying to figure out, oh God, I've got to go to my fitness pal and try and figure out what am I going to do here.
Yep.
That's when a disaster happens and you go, shut the app and you look around for anything.
Yep.
So my goal is to have a client equipped with a plan A and then a plan B, a plan C, and plan D. And when I see these deployed, I'm like, in no way is deploying a plan D a failure compared to deploying a plan A. In fact, that's showing me that you've just like navigated, like the things that are going on in life.
Yep.
And you've got solutions now for every circumstance.
Yep.
So it's an even greater win than just being prepared.
No, I know what you mean. That I really like some of that. I'll probably actually even steal a little bit of it. But I've kind of adapted a rip-off of the Weight Watchers thing with the protein point system.
Yeah.
So very, very basics. It's kind of like if you can't do this, you can't do the more complicated stuff anyway, right? Got to crawl before you can walk. So I've established 100 grams of protein, so meat, not actually the macronutrient, whether it be meat or fish, that counts as 4 points.
Yeah.
And an egg counts as 1. And then based on that person, look, you've got to hit 24 points today. And that'll work out to be somewhere between sort of 600 and 800 grams of meat. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that way, then, to your point, okay, you've had a podcast today. Normally you eat 3 meals. Now you eat 2 meals. That's very easy for you to figure out. And for somebody, and we're looking at, biggest bang for buck, obviously protein's got the most nutrient density in it, which is going to support their brain function. It's going to give us the satiety mechanism. So then when I'm telling you, for the most part, eat to your appetite from whether it be, white rices, sweet potatoes, a little bit of fruit, like the chances of you overeating, if you hit that protein goal, is going to dramatically come down.
See what I like about that, and maybe it's just because it confirms my it runs in alignment to what I'm doing, is we're both talking about a system that we feel like reduces mental load to carry out. You know what I mean? You talk about a system that went up to 24, that you talk all low numbers there. I'm talking about a system that works in 500s. To me, the addition or subtraction of 500s is nice and easy math for anyone. And so that is one of the things that I think gives people confidence and certainty, because there's nothing that'll really drag people off their plan quicker than a lack of confidence in what they're doing, or the exhaustion which making decisions under exhaustion, which just leads to like very poor outcomes, right? So and so to finish off where I was sort of going with my client journey, if I can just kind of build out what that looks like here. So we've shown them what a fish is. And then really for the time being is like, you're kind of giving them fish in a way. Like these are recipes and stuff that I've come up with, and they're fairly diverse, right? And also we have a kind of a file, like a nutrition planner type thing for them where they can do really easy substitutes. So this thing, you can just kind of go, I don't have avocado, you type it in and it spits out 20 other high fat substitutes with the exact portion. So it skips a couple of steps forward.
So it's like a this or that.
This or that. It's really easy. It's just kind of like another plug and play thing with ingredients. But the next step, and this usually happens at about the 4 to 6 week mark with someone, when I see them doing well, I'm looking for feedback that they're going, oh, that came in really handy. Like I went to this work thing and like I knew straight away what do I want to eat. Like it was so good. I never do that. And I'm looking for those things. And I say, okay, cool. Can we go to the next step now? And you see how there's like a blank bit in our nutrition tracker thing ready for meals? That's the section where I want you to start coming to the party and like, what are the customizations? What do you want? You guys do Taco Tuesdays? Excellent. Let's figure out a 500 calorie meal for Taco Tuesdays. Yeah, cool. And so like that's their thing. It's like the little bit of homework is like, oh, how can I make this fit? And I'll do it in front of them just to give them a tiny little tutorial about like how you would start off that process of building out a meal. But they know what they're looking for, and I think that gives them, again, it creates more skin in the game. It creates a much more customized and long-term solution for them. That is then now they're taking the reins back off you. It's like, now you can fish.
Yep.
I showed you what a fish is. I gave you some fish to start with. You are now just like, catching fish like crazy.
And you can just help with a little bit of guidance.
Yeah. And then you just step away and they own it then.
So when we do have people like Sardine, who I actually like, but is demonizing vegetables. For those that are listening, when would be a good argument for perhaps avoiding vegetables, or would you never do that?
No, I've done that this week with a client.
Cool.
So it was actually one of my bodybuilder guys in Sydney who were just having some digestive issues with, and after playing around with things. And here's the thing, it's like, rather than demonize a food group, it's like, well, why don't we carry out an investigation? How does everyone feel about that?
Yep.
You know, if you're of any nature evidence inclined, then I think it's fair to say, why don't we have a look and then go through a process of elimination and have a see if we can figure out what might be contributing some of the disease or the problems with digestion. So
of course, but pulling out the vegetables actually can be beneficial temporarily for some people if they're having maybe histamine issues, bloating issues, constipation issues. Yep. But then on the other hand, maybe you've got someone who's got biliary issues and they've got difficulties absorbing their fats. Well, maybe something like some artichoke or rocket would be a really good idea with your high-fat meals.
And how does the keto carnivore guy go on if he decides to go on that diet with a biliary issue? You know what I mean?
He's going to feel like a wet log trying to burn in a fire.
Mate, exactly. So this is context. This is what we're trying to say is that like if you're going to come out and stick your flag in the ground that you are like carnivore only or whatever, like it's only a matter of time before these guys bend. That's what I say. Just give them some time. I'm a patient guy. Like I'll watch you come back on this. And what's happened over the last couple of years? Bananas are okay now, man. Honey's okay now.
Bananas used to be best kept for the monkeys.
Yeah, exactly.
According to Poliquin.
So, but there's the thing is like you'll see like there's now variants off of carnivorism, even coming from like what you would call the main proponents of it.
Yep.
And I think you're only going to see more of that as people come down off that framework. But you mentioned frameworks before, and I think you're actually alluding to something like that. Then, like, how did I feel about that as a framework? Because I think you mentioned one of them earlier, right? And I don't mind frameworks. I even have some very experienced coaches that I have, the pleasure of coaching, who sometimes will go to a framework where they'll go, look, I'm going to, do a ketogenic diet for a bit, or I'm going to do a whatever it is, because they find the boundaries that
it
doing
works
that,
for
it
them.
just it clears their working memory, their mental load of the decisions. They go, when I go to the shops or the market, like this is what I buy. When I'm at home, these are the choices I have, and there's just less choice. They don't find it as a restriction. They're not carrying around any kind of like, issues around their relationships with food and stuff like that. It's just a simple system. It's a tool.
Do you believe that a lot of people have difficulty obtaining better health because they struggle to even get to that point where they can view their food in that way, where it's not a place of gluttony and they want variety and they want to be, we're very blessed in Melbourne, for example, to have a lot of fancy restaurants and, diverse palates. Whereas, for me, nutrition's very simple. Like I eat the same fucking shit with very little variation. And to your point, like whether it be depending on what I'm trying to achieve at the time. For me, if I'm trying to put on more weight, I will eat more rice. I will eat more potatoes. I will eat a shitload of butter. I will eat lots of honey. I will eat lots of dates, shit like that. And it's very easy for me to then just pull those things out if I want to go in the opposite direction. But I feel like so much difficulty for people is getting to that place of looking at food as something that's provides a return on investment. And it's, their purpose of why they're eating's very different.
I think, and because let's face it, like we have a bit of a bias of the people that we are surrounded with that are very much from a fitness orientation, right? That people tying in their value of food to body composition alone leaves a lot to be desired. I think that's a system that's fraught to come down at some stage, because you just can't go through decades of your life with body composition being your number one priority.
No.
You just can't. But if you tie in the way that you value and utilize nutrition to that above all else, then you're going to end up in problems. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see these problems. You and I are very much into whole foods and very much into nutrient density, and we like to educate on that front, and it biases us towards the content we create and the food we personally consume. I hope in doing so that some of that rubs off, just so that people can find other reasons to eat beyond just fat loss or muscle building. Like, hey, some of the, improving the risks of not dying. How does that sound? Like, I don't know, man. That sounds pretty good to me.
And even if something as simple as like, I'm not that rigid, right? I'll still eat an ice cream a couple times a week. But it's, again, in context of everything else that I'm doing, that's contributing to a very small percentage of the window. Whereas someone who's got a really poor relationship with food, and they probably are under eating, and then you see that 50% of their total daily calories has come from some processed crap, that has a very different impact on that individual.
Yeah. And look, I think at the end of the day, like it's like that, the road to mastery, right? And we talked about this before about like, you know, when you know nothing about anything, you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't even know how bad you are yet. And then you go to consciously incompetent. That's like the wake up call and go, shit, I know nothing.
Yeah.
And then comes the awkward phase, the uncomfortable phase next. And that's conscious competence. You're
Where everything's
learning,
an effort.
You're growing, everything's an effort, but it's going to pay off. And this is what you're trying to tell people. And people who look at a system that is like whether it's counting calories or macronutrients or something that they find too restrictive, they think that that's something that like that's going to go on forever. It has no end date. And I'm like, no one lives there with that, because you reach a point of mastery and your goals change and stuff like this, but you become unconsciously competent. And that's what we talk about. The example is about like driving a car. You know, once you've driven a car for a couple of years, you don't overthink in every little thing. You're still vigilant, hopefully, but you're not vigilant to the point of it feels like a hyper vigilance.
But you can multitask.
You can multitask.
Which isn't
well,
what we're
probably going to get
advising.
fined for multitasking.
But you can.
Isn't it crazy? Like when you think about what you used to be able to do in cars and you can't even do anything now, except drive.
One that should be illegal, I believe, is when I see chicks doing their makeup in the morning. If I'm not allowed to send a text on my phone, which I don't like doing anyway, I've had a car accident or two, and I learned and thankfully got away pretty unscathed from them, but how quickly that can happen. If a chick is there doing her makeup, that is easily as distracting as anything else you could be doing in the car.
Absolutely, man. I was watching a video, like a movie the other day, and like it was an 80s movie, and it was like when they had the bricks in the cars. You know what I mean? Like the handheld brick that you would like.
Oh, yeah.
Like a huge phone. And I was like, man, they used to build cars with those. Could you imagine like how distracting that would be? Yeah, no seatbelts. Yeah. That would be these days. But anyway, so like back to our point about the nutrition and learning and stuff like that. Like if you think that you're going to be counting calories and macros for the rest of your life, like holy shit, like that would never be the thing that I hope anyone thinks they're walking away with from like a lot of coaches. That's your system.
I feel like that's what so many people are stuck in.
Yeah, because I agree with you, actually. Sorry. And what I would say by that is I feel like so many people are stuck in that because they're stuck in where they want to go with their body composition. And like, man, how many people do you know that say, who here's dieting? Yeah, and you know, he's been dieting for like the last 3 years. And people are putting their hands up saying they feel like they've been trying to lose weight for like 5 years plus. You know, feeling like they're not actually in a diet, you know, a caloric deficit. Otherwise, they would have achieved their goals by now.
For sure.
But it's this incessant feeling that they're constantly trying to figure out how to achieve their goal with their weight or sustain it or whatever it is, right?
Do you think then that argues even that it starts to become unhealthy from a psychological point of view?
Mate.
Like that's...
Absolutely.
It's an eating disorder, really.
Yeah. But I think it's just a lot of people like fluffing around in either a system that's not great for them or, again, like not really applying themselves wholeheartedly to a process. Like it feels like it. So here's the thing, right? If you stick to a plan pretty hard, like 4 to 5 days a week, and then you let loose on the weekend and undo all of your work, which you and I know is really easy to do.
Can do.
Yeah.
If you're on a 250 calorie deficit a day, you'll blow that out,
mate,
in one binge on a weekend.
I love that. I love this wake-up call for clients, especially if they consider themselves to have a fairly high nutrition literacy. Like, oh, no. Like, when I do this, I don't track that, but I make good choices.
But they feel like every day is the reset, right? Which is bullshit.
But the thing is that these guys, when you give them the wake-up call, they're like, listen, you're a human being. And guess what? Like, the research shows us is that human beings are notoriously very, very poor, okay, at gauging the actual intake in these, like, higher calorie-free days where you're just going to go off your plans.
Yeah, there's plenty of research out there to show that people actually tracking calories are very bad at tracking calories.
Just in general, right?
Yeah.
But like, so, you know, if someone's on 2,000 calories a day and then they think, oh, I had a relaxed weekend, but in their mind, they're going probably only 2,300 calories, but they track it. It's like, they're hitting like 4,000 calories, man. 4,500 calories. Like, it's just, that's it. That's what's happening. But here's the problem. What I see is that people don't think that little excursion off their plans warrants them not getting results because they feel like the duration of the Monday through Friday was so hard. I was so good. This surely couldn't have undone my work.
Yep.
You know, and it's just like, mate, you need to kind of have some objectivity here.
That's their feelings.
It's just feelings. That's exactly right. And then go from there. You know, and I feel like a lot of people get stuck in that kind of dedication, that kind of strategy, and that can go on forever with you going in the wrong direction, just gradually gaining weight over the years.
Yeah. But do you feel like that kind of behavior is more likely to occur because of the restrictive calorie model that they're in from the Monday to Friday to begin with, or the lack of nutrition within that. Because we could even say here that there's a 1600 calorie diet and there's a 1600 calorie diet. Depending on what micronutrients are in that 1600 calorie diet, it's probably going to have a very big difference of outcome for that person's level of satiety, mood, energy, training, recovery, so forth.
I think it's very multifactorial.
Yeah.
I think
Always.
I would give that
Always.
a level of contribution.
Yeah.
But I would also just give other significance to, just their lack of organization, their lack of understanding, or just thinking that they're completely, that they're consuming less than what they really are. There's just some gaps there that I think contribute to this over time.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, like what we see is just people that feel like they're dieting for a long time and have a food association with, I'm either on or off. And so that is like definitely starting to come under the category of a version of an eating disorder. So yeah,
I love the saying, if you've only got one ass, you can't sit on two horses. And I find that people's feelings, seeing as it's on topic, is what's so hard for them to get over, because they go, okay, I've got these internal issues. Maybe it's digestive, maybe it's hormones, maybe it's mental health, energy, whatever it may be. Then they go, I've got these professional goals, so I need to be pushing the needle to the red. Yeah. Oh, but I also want to lose weight.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm struggling to find the time to get to the gym. I can't change the laws of the universe for you. Like you kind of need to just accept patience and pick one for a while, because those three goals may be pulling in very different directions to one another.
I think that's part of the coaching process, is recognizing, because there are times you've got to push people and times you've got to pull people back, right?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like, I'm never of creating a limited mindset or a victim mentality or like a weakness. It's just not, it's just definitely not a place that you want to be spending much time in the coaching process. But like, feasibility is a big part of what we do. And so like, when someone I remember I had a client, right? And he this is back when I was personal training. It's been a little while now, but we got into this discussion one day, and he was a bit of a thug. He was a bit of a brute, this guy. Mm-hmm. And he just said something quite profound in such a much simpler way than I would have ever put it. And he's like, Benny, like, it was almost like this Tom Hanks moment. He's like, life is like a stove, right? Not a box of chocolates, a stove.
A stove.
He's like, there's 4 burners, but you're always trying to cook 5 meals. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I just got it. Like,
I've heard worse analogies.
Yeah, I just like, I can use this, bro.
Yeah.
It's so true. So like, when people want that, they go, oh look, I want to have like an incredibly successful entrepreneurial side, or and then family's really important to me, and then I want to be able to do this, and then I want to be able to be 4% body fat as well, and it's just like,
it's unrealistic.
Yeah. For me, I think something that people don't do as often as what I think would benefit them would be to just have a way of viewing their actions over time frames, meaning, like, having systems that work for you over a day is great. Okay, having systems or a review process of like, how did your week go? Okay, what was one of the obstacles, and what are you going to do about it? That's very common in coaching, because we often have weekly check-ins. So that's a great time frame to kind of like realign, assess, and go ahead with something new.
Yep.
But then also understanding like, well, what can we do over a quarter, or what does your year look like over 4 quarters? Because you might know that like, third quarter of the year is like an absolute push mode with work.
Yep.
Okay. And then yet you see like, we want to be 4% body fat by October. There's something that doesn't go with that. You know what I mean? Why don't we use that as a phase of, internal, nourishment. We could put you in a slight muscle accrual phase, but not with huge expectations of like the fastest route possible to muscle growth. If we may be limited in some of the sessions you could do, or
keeping
whatever
your volume lower.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think sometimes people just don't sort of step back and go, look, when are the busiest times of my year? Okay. Because if you don't do that, then they become the things that they become the obstacles, and then you resent the system because you feel like it goes against your life. You know, it's like, oh, I'm trying to be healthy, but like, what, I can't even go to like a barbecue and eat like meat and have some dessert. Like, you know, it's these kind of things. It's like, well,
Getting the feelings.
yeah, get the feelings, you know, or, you know, I can't take holidays without thinking about like feeling guilty and stuff like that. It's like, but if you actually sat back and mapped out your year, for instance, and recognized where it is, where these times and events are, I think that actually gives you a much more objective look at what you're capable of doing. And therefore you can talk to yourself in a way that's much more conducive, you know. And so I remember when I used to do like group seminars at gyms, you know, and like for transformations or nutrition and things like that. And I would just say, all right, there's 52 weeks in a year. Who thinks that you should be dieting for 52 weeks of any year? Who here thinks that for every single week over the next 52 weeks that you should be dieting? You know, and you know, barely anyone puts their hands up. You're like, thank God. Someone does, just to be funny, and you're like, okay, cool, let's talk about that. But then as you work your way back and go, okay, what about 48 weeks, 11 months of the year? Who thinks that 11 months of the year is a sensible time to be doing a dieting, you know? And then you start working your way back and go, okay, let's say you've got like 10, 15 kilograms to lose. Who here is up for dieting for 10 months of the year? And you'll start to see some hands come up because it's the, you know, Pareto's kind of 80-20 rule here. It's like, well, I think I could do that. And I said, okay, well, let's actually think about what's in a year. Okay. Who here has a month of crazy work? Like nearly everyone puts their hand up for at least 1 month of crazy work. Who here has very important birthdays or weddings or things at least 6 times a year? Cool. And then you see like 6 weekends come up. And so you start adding the weeks and go, do you guys see now that we're already back at like 32 weeks? You know, and this is like,
and there's probably like a month of personal struggle where shit's just not good in your life and everything's gone belly up, personal relationships or something.
Yeah. And so what I would say to that is that's not to put people in dismay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also like actually not to, again, you don't want to create that weakness. And
if anything, it makes it almost sound a bit more achievable.
But what it does for me is it drags people out of chronic dieting.
Yeah.
It says, well, from a macro, so from a, how we devote time frames over months, for instance, like can we devote this towards a muscle gain phase, please? There seems to be like a lot of social events here. You know what would be really cool is if we were in a caloric surplus, and it lends itself to a lot more leniency around the calories and food.
You're in a good place.
Yeah, what you're telling me, like everyone has their birthdays over September, October, November.
Great.
You know what I mean? Let's do it. Like we mapped that out here, and then you go into that with an actual sensible and congruent goal.
Which probably makes your dieting on the other side of that a bit easier because you've had a better metabolic adaptation and you got a higher baseline to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mate, I mentioned the word volume there, and this is a trend that I'm picking up on. You mentioned Jake. He's been banging it home pretty hard over the last few weeks about the mechanisms of hypertrophy and how, I suppose, I guess the argument that seems to be getting presented at the moment is that mechanical tension is all that really matters, and the factors of muscle damage and metabolic stress are becoming a little bit more redundant in terms of its value. What are your feelings and thoughts on that? When we're looking at rep ranges, and sets.
Yeah. Mate, you just like straight into that. There was like no segue connecting out that conversation. Well, there was Jake actually.
There was.
That's a good one. He's look, I think it's a very sensible conversation. Like from what we can see, or how I interpret the evidence, that does seem to be like a far greater contribution to hypertrophy and muscle gain than muscle damage and metabolic stress. However, I think there's some really important practical caveats to these kind of things, you know, and that is, I know plenty of guys who probably don't have a rig that's going to lend itself to do it. So like what we're saying here, just so we better just clarify a little bit, is that, you know, you can keep the working sets quite low, you know, like maybe like 1 to 2 work sets per exercise and only a couple of exercises per muscle group per session for the total amount of sets, and that the reps that count, the most stimulating reps, are going to be those ones with very...
Last 2.
Yeah, a lot of proximity towards failure, actually failing.
Yep.
Okay.
And the argument being that it's a lot easier to gauge failure at a 5 to 7 rep range than what it is 20. Because if you did 20, could you really not have done 25 or 30?
Yeah. This is like when I'm in the middle of like a really high deadlift AMRAP set, right? Just like I have no idea what's coming here. Just trying to keep going. But so to my point with the caveats, practically speaking, is like there's just people here that, and not gonna like they're gonna have beat up elbows and shoulders and things like that. Where when you're talking about the loads necessary to use really low reps in some of these exercises, it just may not suit everyone.
True.
There's like certain exercises that I execute that I mean, I love low reps. I love lifting heavy. And I kind of like low volume, especially as I'm getting older. I can tell you now, like my body does not recover at 41 like it used to at 31. From a volume standpoint. And I think that is important. Is that like you can achieve with the lower volumes and still try and get that mechanical stress and adaptation without accruing a lot of the fatigue that comes along with these volumes. But nonetheless, I think there's still a place for like higher volumes than, maybe going completely off one end of the spectrum here, and rep ranges that allow for, a different set of loads to be used as well.
Yep.
No, I agree massively. Like, what about think about a phase of skill acquisition. If someone hasn't spent years in the gym like we have, the reality for them to be able to even achieve a 5-rep failure is stupid. There's no way they can even create a good stimulus because of their coordination to actually achieve a true failure and keep it isolated to what they're even trying to do. And we know that they're going to probably spread load and be less isolated, less controlled, the heavier it becomes. So I think when people are starting out, of course, strength is always the focus with progressive overload, but you need to utilize higher reps to develop that conditioning and coordination.
Like, I don't know if there should be something called if we need something like a pussiness factor that goes next to like an exercise.
A pussiness factor.
Yeah, just like a wimp factor. I don't know, pussiness, I don't know. Like, there are certain exercises that are just brutal, right?
Yep.
And I think now,
Name some. What do you think are the hardest ones?
Oh, man. Like, if you think of, a pendulum squat, if you think
nowhere to hide in a pendulum.
You're nowhere to hide in a pendulum squat. You got nowhere to hide in a hack squat. I think if you're doing, just any kind of row where you're
chest
not
supported.
Fully... Yeah, chest supported, for instance.
You can't cheat with the hips.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but nonetheless, if you walk into a gym these days, I do think, and this is where I'll give credit to the amazing work that so many of our peers are doing on social media, especially in Australia. You can see a lot of people training with a great exercise selection and execution. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You see every cable machine now is hard to get a hold of with people lining up, and the biomechanics of things are much, much better than what they used to be.
Protractors out.
Yeah. Yep. You still see people doing dumbbells like this, I don't think
defying the laws of gravity.
We're never going to get to a point where that doesn't happen. But I think across the board, when I look around these days, I'm like, okay, this is way different than 10 years ago.
Quality of training is definitely going up.
But wait. This is because the quality...
Technique.
Exactly.
Technique
this is what I do.
is going up.
That's because the quality, if you want to encompass the effectiveness, you know what I mean, of what they're doing, sometimes I got to sit there and kind of question it, because a lot of these exercises, they don't get to move the load of some of the bigger exercises that are being sacrificed to do them. They look like they're going to very close to failure, but I would even question it sometimes as well. I don't hear any sounds in the gym sometimes, except myself. I've turned into that.
It's hard to put 300 kilos down lightly without any noise on the deadlift. So I think the gym can forgive you for that.
Yeah, but what I mean is sometimes you see people training. There's no struggle on their face. There's no there's no drenched sweat shirts anymore. There's you know what I mean? And I think maybe I'm old school and but I just think that I see people training smart in the sense of exercise selection and execution on some things, but I think that has to be paired up with exercises that take you mentally to a place that you need to go. And this comes back to only using low rep, low volume stuff as well. Is I don't think necessarily that prepares everyone to the kind of exposure that you just release the beast.
You'll learn some things about yourself in a high rep, heavy hardcore set to failure with drop sets.
Mate, you make people do I remember making clients do some of the most insane cluster sets. You know what I mean? Which you would definitely go beyond the conversation of just a 1 to 2 work sets of 4 to 7 reps, and there was going to be a lot of muscle damage and metabolic stress and stuff like that as well. But just when you do something like that and you realize where your true potentials are, and then you come back to a more like simpler system of reps and sets and things like that. You watch a client, I know you've seen it. You watch a client go, man, this feels so much easier. I'm just like right on it now. It's like, yeah, because I buried you mentally, you know what I mean? And you are reborn as someone who now knows like what it's like to go through fucking hell.
Yeah, learning how to push.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that I actually, because I had a CrossFit background before I was in bodybuilding. I did that for a little while. I really enjoyed it. And it was actually like my foray back into performance-based sports, having not played any sports for a very long time. But then as I sort of like went into more the body composition, bodybuilding side of things again, and I was personal training, I would really know when I got a CrossFitter come to train with me. Because I'd be just like mentally where they would take themselves in every single set.
They know how to push.
Bro. Without a doubt. You know, and I go, this is something that isn't explained in just kind of saying, oh, hey, like maximum muscle stimulus in the lowest volume and lowest rep range possible.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of it's almost like a petty argument, I find, with just the whole training stuff a little bit, because it's really only the people in the industry arguing with one another. Yeah. Whereas, because if we look at general population people, we got to take into consideration, well, how about just training morale? You're not a bodybuilder. And maybe you are somebody who is a high business performer and you've only got 45 minutes. You can't afford to rest for 3 minutes in between every set so that you can get, an extra one out at that intensity. It's just not, again, we talked about feasibility with the nutrition. It's also feasibility with your approach to training. Yeah. And unless you are a professional athlete or an aspiring bodybuilder, I don't think there's anything wrong with just coming in and fucking putting some hard work into the gym. Yeah. Of course, you can. There's layers of how intelligently or poorly you can kind of do that and construct it and pair things together. But
yeah, I think like the pendulum always swings too far. Yeah. In our industry, in nutrition, in training, it always does. And that's what I sort of said before. Like I'm a patient man. When I get like too many people. We did a podcast on, what was our podcast on? We did
the one we did after the Game Changers.
Game Changers,
yeah,
sorry.
Right?
And I was just like, so whenever I see like carnivore, veganism, like with a context which I just do not find evidence-based whatsoever, I'm just like, I'll just give you some time. Come back in 5 years and tell me how it's going.
That's become boring, that conversation.
I'm like, come back in 5 years because I know now you've swung into an area of complete delusion, right? And you are just, you cannot reason someone out of something they didn't reason themselves into in the first place. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to spend any time on you.
The cognitive dissonance is just,
it's
not
crazy.
Even worth approaching.
Yeah. And so we always do this, but it's also part of the learning process. So this is why I'm like, I'm okay with that as well. Like I said things 5 years ago that I'm just like, you laugh at now. You've done that as well. 10 years back, we're all laughing at things that we said because we know more as well.
Yep.
But like with a lot of things, and I think the training thing is one of it, what's spurring the creation of content around us talking about, the difference between muscle damage and metabolic stress and stuff like that. It's because we do see people training ineffectively with way too much junk volume. Just
shit. Lack of quality.
This is no quality to this training. There's a lot of jumping around, and that's it. And so that's what drives an education in that regard. What inevitably will happen is it's just going to go too far, and then people will go, "Oh, hold on a sec. Like we're going to bring this a little bit further back into the center because there are reasons why these have merit." And I think like it's you still see it now is like with the discussion on volume. Low volume advocates and high volume advocates are often really training for the same length of time. They have the same. It's like, how long do you train for? An hour and 15 minutes. Well, how long do you train for? An hour and 15 minutes. Then how the fuck are you a low volume guy and you a high volume guy? And it's like, because, well, maybe what you count as work sets, this guy's counting as like ramping sets into his top set or something like that. But his ramping sets maybe actually are still quality effective sets that are leading him into that, proximity towards failure as well.
Yeah.
But maybe it's only tracking that top set. I do that a lot. You know what I mean? It's just like, I just track in my head.
Yeah, everything's a preparation for that one top set. That's kind of how I approach it.
But some of those sets coming right up to that set,
they're still hard, they're still effective, they're still doing something.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's where I feel like the conversation sometimes it's just nuanced. I'm like, okay. Yeah. I feel like we're talking about the same thing a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the things that you can notably talk about that you've changed your opinion on?
Man, we did a whole episode on this, and I'm just drawing a blank.
On the Catabasis podcast?
Yeah. Alex and I kind of went through, and we sort of said, like, what are some of the things that we have changed our minds on?
I've spoken heaps about BCAAs lately. That's the obvious one for everyone.
Yeah. Well, Lane started us down that path, man.
Did he? Was he the first to ship?
No. He did some really good research on BCAAs for his PhD, I think it was.
Okay.
But he already had his platform by then, and this is back when I owned supplement shops, so we used to sell BCAAs. However, it was pretty soon evident thereafter that it was going to be a better choice to get essential amino acids.
Yeah.
And that was still based on the premise that there was going to be a magnified outcome by having really quick substrate, so the building blocks of protein for muscle damage and requirement beyond consuming a meal in the vicinity of a training session, whether it be before and after. And as time goes on, we've just seen the relevance of that seems to be less and less, which is getting us away from like a lot of the utility in some of these supplements and stuff. So that's absolutely fair, and something I would have changed my mind on. Deloads is a big one.
In what direction?
Oh, I just, when I first learned about
think they're needed or not needed?
Yeah, not needed to anywhere near what I initially was trained and thought that they were needed.
Mate, I think that plays perfectly off what we were just previously talking about. Is do you even train hard enough to warrant a fucking deload?
Yeah.
No, probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So that's something where I put again, it was just. And this is, I don't research everything I ever learn as well. Like sometimes you learn things from a course you go to or whatever, and you don't do the diligence in looking it up afterwards, and you just take things at face value from, a resource that you have trust in or, whatever. And, when I first learnt about programming and such, I just thought there was more merit in deloads for the population that I was training than what there really is.
Yeah.
Which I just don't think there is. So, I don't plan deloads for most of my clients anymore. It's just kind of like structured training with an awareness that a lot of the time the reason for having what would appear like a deload is just the external stressors too high. Someone has like me, myself, I'm like, I've got a 3.5-year-old who's been a brilliant sleeper for the first 3.5 years of his life. In the last 3 weeks, he's scared of the dark all of a sudden, and my wife and I are just shattered. Like I pulled an all-nighter last night, which, man, I can't believe I used to do this for fun, but I'm just broken, and I have been broken for a couple of weeks now, and so I know that I've got to pull back on training. Like I can some of the aches and pains and everything else. I'm like, you do not go and press today.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the deload. You're wearing an Oura ring right now. I'm wearing an Oura ring. I kind of use that as my indicator for a deload day and get a little bit of somewhat objective data to know that, okay, today's my day that I should not be trying to set world records in the gym, and that I probably should tailor a little bit more towards recovery. My HRV's down, my resting heart rate's up, my sleep quality was shit house.
Yeah.
Do I need a full week for that? No.
Yeah. So deloads, that would be something. What else have I changed my mind on a lot? Just trying to think with nutrition.
Can we talk about omega-3s? Maybe that'll tie in. Because there's always a bit of, like most things in the industry,
Yeah.
ping pong matches.
I do have a good one for you.
Hit me.
Okay, so remember when I launched Attain? So Attain was like I did
It's like your educational biochemist.
Yeah, an educational portal, and like I was teaching at the time. I was getting a lot of mentoring requests for biochemistry and stuff.
That was when Benny the biochemist was the hard name you were referred to.
Yeah. And look, I really enjoyed it and stuff like that. But ultimately, it was just some really great caliber coaches actually that I got to do mentoring with. But it probably wasn't scaling out to where most coaches were going to get a lot of benefit from it. So I've kind of like changed what I teach about and stuff now. But one of the ads that we ran for that, on Facebook was me on a video talking about, I think it was like this. If you're a coach who's prescribing 20 capsules of fish oil, and this was like a go at the Poliquin.
Yeah, well, that's where it came from, Poliquin, yeah.
Yeah, and this was because
I've done it, and I've told people to do it as well.
Yep.
Had people eating like 20 fish oils a day.
Yeah, so I owned supplement shops back in the day, and then all of a sudden...
So you were basically Liver King.
Yeah, basically. And all of a sudden, I would have Poliquin trainers coming in, or Poliquin the clients of Poliquin trainers with laundry lists of supplements. And I'd be like, sweet, this is like $1,000 sale coming up.
Yep.
You know? And then I would be looking and going, you're going to have 30 capsules of fish oil a day? What is this? And I go, well, we're going to have like 1 capsule per, I'm not too sure of the stats, like percent body fat or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you know, they don't go to the premium fish oils. They go on like to the bucket out the front that's like $14 for 400
Been sitting
capsules.
in the sun with the glass.
I'm already trying to tell people not to buy that. I'm like, listen, like I don't really trust the, you know, not that you say you don't trust your own product that you're selling, but you go, look, there's
better choice.
There's better choices, like, you know, these ones here, we have a certificate of analysis, you know, to make sure that the quality's there, they don't contain as many heavy metals and blah, 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 blah. So I did a ad that was really playing off of that, saying, you know, if you're doing this, like perhaps you're actually doing a disservice to your client by putting potentially a whole heap of rancid fish oils in them, or you're going to deplete them of their oil-based antioxidants. They're going to keep them from going rancid in their in their body. Okay, and so that's one of the things that like over time, my process of doing that was because I thought I knew a biochemical pathway in which I was like trying to go, I'm going to take some mechanistic data and I'm going to come after this and try and talk you out of that or give you the, you know, my thoughts on that. And so nonetheless, like I think omega-3 are amazing. I talk about them all the time with their benefit to multiple aspects of health and things like that. And interestingly enough, on a short-term study basis, they have actually looked at giving subjects rancid fish oil, like literally left it on a beaker, on a bench, exposed, like with deliberate heat and stuff like that, and then given it to people to drink.
Why?
To take to test this hypothesis, I think.
Okay, right.
To see, to sort of, and they were using various metrics of, you know, whether they were seeing anything different with,
just like inflammatory markers on their bloods and stuff like that.
Things like that. And surprisingly, no, there was like no differences, which I think surprised the researchers as well. They came back with like, that's kind of weird.
No doubt.
Now, I still wouldn't be doing that, okay, because the length of the study wasn't great. And there just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to be, you know, purposefully trying to get yourself poor quality, you know, nutrition.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be putting my hand up for that one.
No.
So what do you reckon are the brands to look for if somebody is interested in omega-3 fish oil supplementation? Bioceuticals?
Yeah. Here in Australia, Bioceuticals is a very good one. Just what am I going to do? Like a disclaimer, my wife works for them. So, but they have a certificate of analysis on, like a third-party certificate of analysis on their products, like their top-of-the-line fish oil. And I think it's the best I've ever seen. And I'm stacking that up against what I would call some very premium brands like Nordic Naturals, which are very, very good as well. But the Bioceuticals one just seems to be on another level. Their TOTOX values, which is their total oxidation scores, their heavy metal analysis and things like that, they are almost like a order of magnitude greater in terms of the outcomes. So very happy with that.
And what is your sort of ratio working for how much someone should be taking?
So based off of the omega-3 index. So the omega-3 index is a pinprick blood test you can do from home. You just order it from Omega Quant is the company that does it.
Cool.
You can order it from them. They'll send it out to you. You prick your blood, put it on a piece of paper. You send it back to them. They send the results directly back to you. And it's expressed as a percentage, okay? And that percentage is, if you imagine a red blood cell, it's like a spherical shape there. There's a membrane that encloses it. And the amount of EPA and DHA, which are those good omega-3s, as a percentage of the total fatty acids that encompass that membrane is your score.
Yep.
Okay, and those scores typically are between 3% and 13%. Okay, on the extremes there. With the evidence basically pointing towards anything above 8% is, in comparison to lower nutritional statuses of omega-3, is better in a lot of outcomes. You know, we can be talking about like a 35% reduction in all-cause mortality compared to the lower ones. If you want to talk about something recent like COVID, there's been multiple studies that have looked at omega-3 index and COVID outcomes for those patients that have received mechanical ventilation back when they were doing that, or you know, just being in intensive care, and the odds ratio was around about 3.3 for those in the lowest omega-3 index status compared to the highest, meaning you were 3.3 times as likely to require mechanical ventilation. Okay, so
with poor omega-3
with
status.
poor omega-3 status in comparison to high omega-3 status.
Yep.
If you want to, some recent research that came out was on Alzheimer's and all-cause dementia. And there's been lots of studies going back as early as 2006 with some great reductions, like 40% reduction in dementia, and I'm sort of 50%ish for Alzheimer's as well. And so there's multiple ways in which omega-3s benefit health. Some of those ways have got to do with inflammation. Some of them have got to do with the circulatory system. Others have got to do with the fact that they are built into the membranes of things, so it changes the dynamics of the cell. Like it may assist in like certain proteins and transporters and receptors and things like that work more efficiently, and that can be across a range of things, whether it's neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, through to other chemicals in the body as well. So yeah, that would be what guides my thought on how much fish someone should eat or how much omega-3 they should take, and how that looks practically. Okay, so they've looked, Dr. Christina Jackson, I think in 2019, looked at fish intake. So they did like food recall tests and gauged whether people were using supplements, and then looked at the omega-3 index outcomes. So you had people that ate fish not at all, and then like 1 to 3 servings per week, and then 4 to 5 servings per week or something like that. And then also by whether or not they took a fish oil supplement. We're talking about oily fish consumption here, so things like salmon, ocean trout, sardines, herring, anchovies. Now, even if you ate the maximum kind of, or to what they measured, of oily fish per week without a supplement, but you still didn't crack 8%. Okay, the only people that cracked 8% were those that also used a fish oil supplement, which they had to guess because it was a study where there was, they didn't have the specifics, but most fish oil supplements would have about another 300 milligrams of EPA and DHA combined. And so they looked at it and said the only one that actually cracked 8% was if you ate a lot of actual fish per week and you supplemented with fish oil daily. And their assumption based on the data was around about 835 milligrams of EPA plus DHA combined per day. Okay. What that probably looks like, that's around about 6,000, 7,000 milligrams per week, I think. And 100 grams of salmon, for instance, you're going to get around about a gram of EPA DHA. So you'd be looking at 600 to 700 grams of salmon per week.
There's not many people that would be doing that either.
No. And so my question, when coming back to talking about nutrition and optimizing people's health and helping them, make their decisions around their food intake, when it comes to fatty fish, I always ask that as a feasibility question. I'm like, listen, do you like fatty fish? And some people are like, no, obviously. And others will be like, yeah, I love it. I'm like, how much do you love it on your worst week? That's a weird question.
And I go through waves with it, because fishy gets fishy.
That's exactly why I ask it that way. Because otherwise, when you're, especially I found as a coach, people will often tell you things that they think you want to hear, right? Or they imagine themselves under the most optimistic circumstances. And so they'll tell you, 3 times a week. I'm like, how many times in the last 52 weeks did you eat salmon three times a week? Twice.
Yeah.
So I say, look, on your worst week, and then what you get is a usable number at least. And so then they're going to tell you, once a week. I'm like, sweet, I can work with that. So a 200 gram portion once a week. Guess what? We're going to be taking a 1 gram, 1,000 milligram EPA DHA capsule per day then to suffice.
Which is pretty manageable.
It is manageable, right? And I think that just takes into account using food how we want to use it, which is as a base. Yep. And then using a supplement how it's best used, which is as an adjunct to that base.
Are you getting free gluten-free precinct bread yet?
As in, do I get a commission on it or something like
that? No. Are they just giving you bread for free because the amount of promotion
these guys
you've done for
these guys don't even know who I am.
That is wrong. That is plain wrong.
I may just go and do my own, mate.
Because you're a big fan of the magnesium in that bread. And I remember when you first sort of spoke about that, I was, because we always talk about bioavailability. And it just surprised me to hear that there was such good quality magnesium available in a bread.
Yeah. So the reason that particular bread is so high in magnesium is because of the chickpea. So chickpeas, as just the whole normal chickpea, are very high in magnesium. The difference is that not many of us, or even cultures in general, eat large portions of chickpeas.
And that would probably cause a fair bit of digestive upset for a lot of people.
It's strangely enough, yeah. Like in the bread, I digest the bread fine. But if I was to go and do way too many legumes and pulses and things like that, just in normal cooking methods, I don't deal with them too great
Yeah, no, I
for
don't
long
either.
periods of time either.
Yep.
But nonetheless, so this bread made out of chickpea as the main contributing magnesium source is 660 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams. Now, 100 grams, just to give you an idea, is kind of like 2 thin slices of that bread, you know. So it's very easy. So the RDI, the recommended daily intake of magnesium for a average adult, is around about 400 to 440 milligrams.
And do you think those RDIs are usually a little bit lower anyway than what they probably should be?
Do I think it's inadequate?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I do.
I knew the answer to that question, but just for the listeners.
I don't think it's adequate. And I can base that off of working with a lot of people with, high outputs.
There's a lot of variable there depending on the size of the person.
There
what
are,
are they
but-
actually doing? What do they need to recover from?
Yeah,
How's their
I do
stress?
enough blood work on magnesium and enough interventions at both the level of a magnesium food and a magnesium supplement to kind of recognize what I feel is like a better.
And you really need to see red blood cell magnesium, don't you?
This is coming back to things.
This is what things we used to change.
Yeah.
Right?
So I used to demand red blood cell magnesium, but after I kind of looked a little bit further, I'm not so convinced that serum magnesium isn't a very good usable marker.
Because the argument used to be that serum magnesium was the last thing to tank.
Yeah, again,
And you don't think
I got taught that too, and took it at face value until I looked into the research. And I do think that there may be a little bit of merit over red blood cell magnesium, but not as much as I used to think so.
Okay.
I don't test red blood cell magnesium anymore. I just leave it at serum.
What are your go-to blood markers that you like to look at? Like I got a few that I like in terms of like total protein. So if that's low, we could be looking at, that's leading towards maybe some HCl issues or digestive issues. Well, of course, you've got your vitamin Ds and things. And again, people get told that they're normal with their vitamin D, but normal meaning fuck all, really.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I have a very big wish list just for the sake of interest.
Yep.
But like, it would really come down to the conversation with an inquiry or a client and going, look, what is going to be useful for you?
Yeah.
So in Australia here, I've established several connections with GPs that know what I'm about and are really open for me to saying, hey, I'm sending you a very high level person here who this is what we're going to be looking at. Like, would you mind running more comprehensive lab testing than what you might otherwise?
Otherwise, at least you can pay for it privately these days. But again, it's another expense.
That's where I was going next. But I've spent time doing that in various states outside, in Victoria and other states as well, to try and forge those relationships. Because otherwise, going to a doctor and getting knocked back is not a pleasant experience for most people. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be just a successful thing to go and just demand professionals to do something that they don't normally do. And let's face it, some of these doctors do not even run or would know how to use the information in some of these tests that we may be looking
No,
at.
I've had a doctor, when I asked for homocysteine to be tested before, they didn't know what it was.
Homocysteine is a perfect example of that. And so that's why I'm just wary of it. And either you forge a relationship first or you just understand that they may or may not do the testing. But then you have all this private testing. So we have iMedical and iScreen and these things where you can kind of custom build out plans. A lot of them use a sports hormone base as an example. Okay, and that might include like your complete blood count, your biochemistry, so your kidney, liver function, electrolytes with your red cell and white cell indices, and then it might look at an androgen panel, an estrogen. It might look at what else will they put in there? Iron studies might often come in there. Thyroid sort of tends to be like maybe you scale up into the next package and you might get your thyroid tested. Lipids would be in the initial one, and you're going to be talking around about anything from like $140 to $300 mark, depending on how comprehensive you get. Yep. The advantage of that is obviously you can order online, the pathology slip comes to you, you go down to the pathology, the results come back to you. That's it. You didn't have to go to 2 appointments to a doctor to get your results. But nor do you have anyone to interpret them as well.
I also think that, I obviously love it as well. This is what we do. This is what we're kind of passionate about. So we have great interest into it. You just said you've got a big wish list. I like to look at them too, but I also feel like blood work has almost become a little bit popular as well, and sometimes maybe is even leaned upon or ordered a bit prematurely, because it's like, I know your bloods are going to be shit. Look at your lifestyle. Look at your relationship with food. Yeah. It doesn't really matter so much what your blood's doing, because it's kind of like I was saying about the protein point system before. Until you can crawl, we can't walk. Yeah. We can worry about those intricacies that we can see in your blood work with supplementation protocols attached to it once you actually have a basis of what that foundation is. Plus, if you get your blood work done 7 days in a row, you're probably going to get
Oh,
some
absolutely.
big fluctuations in that blood
Yeah.
work. Like, did you what was your morning cortisol? Did you stub your toe that morning? Sent it through the roof.
Yeah.
Did you get less than 6 hours last night? Yeah, no wonder your testosterone's a bit lower.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is just like not putting the cart before the horse, you know, in terms of like, you know, if you're a coach or a practitioner or whatever you are. And what I mean by that is like, if you're learning about bloods, but you've never trained a client face to face because you went straight into online coaching and writing training programs, you know what I mean? And like, there are people out there like that now, you know, where it's like,
I haven't really thought of that, but it's true. Like, I'm really grateful for the 10 years that I spent on the gym floor or more.
the 5 a.m. mornings, like the group training, the one-on-one training. Like
But you're right. So many people aren't doing that
there are so
now.
many people, and so the way that they're going through and scaling their businesses is just in a completely different way to what we did, you know? And this is what I don't like is when you have experts or coaches and, you know, people in our industry who are at a really good level, but it's sort of looked down towards someone using much simpler methods, you know, and you see like, you know, just the dismantling of like some of the things they say because maybe they can't articulate themselves well, you know, when they come across in their socials. But if you look at like the amount of lives some of these coaches are changing, that's the kind of character that I judge people by. You know what I mean? Not how well you can say things on social media or what you're presenting as like the 1% slice of what's going on.
Mate, I know that.
People that are at like franchise gyms, franchise group training centers that are changing thousands of people's lives without knowing what homocysteine is.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I do. Mate, I've fell to this, right? And I've referenced it in previous episodes, whether it be your name, whether it be Jake Carter, whether it be Lucas Owen, the list goes on of these people that I'm grateful to call my peers, that I learn from, that I look up to, that I absorb things from. And then, you know, I feel motivated about my new learnings. Hey guys, look how well I can construct this sentence. I can basically regurgitate methylation the same way that Benny taught me how to, right? And we've got trimethylglycine as the backup pathway. No one knows what the fuck I'm talking about, so it doesn't translate. So it's cool. I'm glad I know it. But my client and my audience don't need to know that stuff. And you may have noticed, I know you're not spending that much time on social media now, but my whole kind of approach to it is how basic can I be?
Yeah.
Because that's what most people need is the basics.
Yeah, so, yeah, look, you know, we got a little bit off topic there, but I think we made some, like, points how we both feel about the comprehensiveness of, you know, blood testing, like what's appropriate, I suppose, and then, like, in what context is it being used, and that, like, some of the most important things are just going to be, like, foundational behaviour change and understanding of, you know, proper training principles and proper nutrition principles.
So who are you working with at the moment? What is your kind of client base?
It's still pretty diverse.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I enjoy a diverse client base.
For sure.
There's always a lot of coaches, which I love. Like, it's part of... I've picked up mentoring again now as well, which I kind of shelved for a couple of years when, you know, I've been pumping out kids and just life's just changed.
Yep.
So I shelved mentoring and I've been doing that again recently, which has been great. But a lot of my clients are great coaches, which I really enjoy coaching, you know.
And I think a lot of people learn that way and become a better coach by selfishly trying to put it in, you know, optimize themselves first.
Absolutely.
Which is a good thing.
Totally. Like, so, you know, and with a lot of these, I think as well, like, and this is a selection bias towards me, I get people that have got some underlying things going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're a great coach and you've also got some gut issues and, you know, you sort of want to look at yourself and optimize yourself, but also learn part of the process as well. And so there's that inquisitive nature of like a mentoring side to it, as well as like a personal improvement side of it too. So I really enjoy those. That's really good. I still have like a few competitors, bodybuilders, strongmen, powerlifters, are the main three. A couple of fighters, but together, all together, competitors will probably encompass around 20% of my list. That's it. Which is the most I could devote. Like, I don't have weekends anymore where I can be rocking up at every show, every meet, and things like that.
Yeah.
I can't even spend 3 hours at the gym anymore like I used to and stuff like that. So I try to be respectful of that. And so if I get an inquiry of someone who expects me to rock up at an interstate show or, you know, like that, I'm just like, I've got to be real. Like, I'm probably not going to be able to do that for you.
Yep.
And if you think you need like someone like that on the day, I would completely understand. And I can, send you some names to go check out. So,
Mate, to maybe wrap things up, you even mentioned before, just as you're, in comparison now in your 40s as your 30s, in training volume and recovery, are there any particular things that you're really fond of at the moment that you're finding to be giving you a good outcome in terms of longevity and recovery, whether that be something like peptides maybe, or whether it be, I don't know if you've got much experience with stem cells, or what the sort of future of that space kind of looks like. And I'm somewhat, again, selfishly asking here that I've just recently had knee surgery and fucked my knee.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's the obvious ones of things like BPC 157.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like PRP is platelet-rich placebo.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts and feelings in that space?
Yeah. So I would say on the aging front, not so much. Not so much just on the aging front. On the healing front,
yeah,
it's a little bit different, right? So I've done my fair share of injuries. I've had PRP. I've had prolotherapy and growth hormone and stuff like that for various things. And I think that there's a place for them. I've never done any stem cell treatment, but I've had some clients who have done it with varying degrees of benefit.
Yeah,
I would say. But in terms of aging, I would basically just say, I think a lot of things changed for me when I became a parent.
Yep.
And so one of the things I do say, and this goes back to again like what we've changed our minds on, but it's not really what I've changed my mind on. It's just how much I've learnt I was wrong. Was just understanding like the kind of things that are really you're dealing with as a parent, like up until prior. And so as a coach, like looking back, I'm like, oh, there were probably some very unrealistic things that I said or ways that I was saying things wrong.
That you asked of people?
Yeah, that I asked or expected of people, or just the solutions that I was providing could have been so much better than what I was providing now that I know what it's like.
Yep.
Because parenting's been like super challenging. It's just like, it's great in so many ways, but I would be lying if I didn't say it was like extremely challenging. And I've had many people sort of say to me, look, you're a really structured guy. I'm up very early in the day. My day sort of starts extremely early, and I would finish work normally at about 4:30 in the afternoon so that I can then take over and fully parent from 4:30 till 7:30 until I put the kids to bed. And then I've pretty much got another half an hour in me until I'm in bed.
Yep.
I have to be so I can get up at 3:45.
You're up at 3:45. Wow, that is early.
I'm up early.
Are you doing that with an alarm, or can you naturally wake up?
I pretty much naturally wake up. That's
impressive.
I have a backup alarm.
That's fucking early.
Yeah, I have a backup alarm on a few days because I have some very early appointments on some days. But for me the reason I do that, so people are like, why would you do that?
You get so much done.
I get so much done. That's exactly
so
right.
much done early.
And I'm like, I work from home. I've tried various offices and stuff like that, and I do work well from home when I have the home to myself. But when the kids are up, it's like another story. Yep. And we were, our kids were nannied at home for a long time, and they've only recently just started a little bit of childcare. And Ruben's now at like little kinder and stuff like that. So it's only recently that I'm getting some time at the home without them there. So that morning time was really important for me. But one of the things that I had to really accept even more so was just being able to be like water. Like with that structure, he's just going, you have to learn how to, take things. Because there are times when kids end up with fevers that it's like, you are not going to the gym.
You can't control everything. Yeah.
Like, I'm not leaving the kid right now. Like, I'm not going to the gym. Like, this is so far down my values list compared to like a kid with like a 40-degree fever. So there's things like that happen. And yeah, especially like when you're dealing with like emotional children, and like when they're in like my littlest one, Arlo, is sort of getting into it now, but we went through that phase with Ruben, and it's just like just watching them try to come to their grips on their emotions and stuff like that can be like really exhausting as someone on the other side of it who's also like sleep deprived and having all these things going. So
then not let your emotions get involved.
Yeah, and then to be able to like shake that off and then go back and put on what you need to put on to be on a video call or to be that person.
Someone's
as well.
paying you for that energy, that
exactly,
attention.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that. So I have to be very meticulous with my planning, but also very okay with the ability to better go, let that go, because you have to work with this and not resent it. And you have to be present as like a father and a husband. And just have an expectation of like things will get done when they will get done. So that's just been really important, and that's kind of like sort of make me recognize like where training fits into all that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, your life is much more than that now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, and, you know, the joke is like, you know, if I ever tweaked something during training and put myself on a couch for 2 days, well, not 2 days, but like, you can't do that when you've got a 2-year-old jumping all over you. They know no mercy, you know? So you can't explain to them, don't jump on me right now.
Yep.
So there's, or, you know, you're going to go down and play on the ground and things like that. So there's little things now where I'm like, I won't do a particular thing that I know might, you know, potentiate me doing a little bit of an injury for things like that now, which I think is a good thing.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for giving me up your time. Guys, sorry about the camera situation, but I'm sure you still pulled lots of value from the conversation. And we'll have you back again probably for a third time sometime soon, man. But it's good to see you.
100%, bro.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.